Before we begin, apologies are in order. Because of the constant technical difficulties, I wasn't able to do this countdown any faster, so instead my good fella JP is doing the editing for me to help me out. I know this might be a bit weird way to get this over with, but at least it works and JP is cool with it. Am I right?
Absolutely.
That being said, finally, back in business. With some assistance, of course. 2014 was a great year for gaming. There was games that many people hyped with no end for good reason, games that were disappointments, and the games like... I got some great news. Aside me getting into new games and game franchises, I even got a new console to play with. Like, it's about goddamn time I got my hands on 3DS. My viewers constantly keep bitching about the lack of Nintendo game content on my videos. But more about that later. Before we get started, few rules needs to be made clear. The games doesn't need to be released in 2014. I just had to play the game during 2014. Also, as usual, only one game per franchise. Also, I'm not including any games I only played briefly during 2014. So sorry Okami and Smash 4, as much as I wanted to include ya to the list, I can. Now then, we got that out of the way, so let's get started. Hey Bob, that's my line!
This is between us. And it ends here.
You know, it's funny how popular it is to make TV series or movies from video games these days. I mean, we got Sonic Boom series this year and it's awesome! But unfortunately this series' prequel games got a negative reception. But we did get another iconic video game character in his new CGI animated series in 2013. I hear many people doesn't like PacMan and the Ghostly Adventures, but I honestly think it's a good show. Not as good as Sonic Boom, but still. So Namco decided to make a game based on the show. Well, to be honest, I admit it was a fun game to play. It's the only good thing about it. The game was short and was very easy to clear, not to mention the level design mostly repeated itself. However, Namco announced the sequel a few months after the European release of the game. I gave PacMan and the Ghostly Adventures 2 a shot, and you know what? That game was a big improvement compared to the previous game. Seriously, this game is fun to play and it had more variety in level design, gameplay, length and difficulty than the last game. The game's levels are set in places like Pacopolis, Packlantis, prehistoric era and in... Huh. I thought there was gonna be an overused joke coming up. Oh well, better move on before...
Oh, come on!
Anyways, the gameplay is pretty solid and makes a great use of the power berries you find to proceed further and defeat enemies and bosses of the game. Hell, even a final battle against Betrayers is good, for a villain who's hard to take seriously at times. Next, the audio of this game. The soundtrack is catchy, especially in Pacopolis stages, and voice acting, while the game doesn't have the same voice cast as in TV series, it's still pretty good. Like, we have Vic Mignogna, Keith Silverstein, David Lodge and... Rufus. In short, PacMan and the Ghostly Adventures 2 is a must-have game for PacMan fans. It's not as good as Pac-Man World 2, but it's still a good game. At least undersea levels are way better in this game, and we don't have to deal with any Killjoy bosses.
Hey, fuck you!
Keep munching those ghosts, Baxter. Your future looks bright at this rate.
Awesome!
And it ends here.
Namco is known for having many iconic and well-selling game series. You know, like previously mentioned Pac-Man, Klonoa, Tails, Tekken and Soul Calibur. These games are quite suitable for kids and teenagers to play, so it's very hard to believe there's an M-rated game series from Namco that was first released even before Mortal Kombat.
What? 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 What?
Yeah, you heard me correctly. There's a game series even older and more gore than Mortal Kombat series. Well, okay, MKX is equally bloody.
Show him why we call it Splatterhouse.
Oh fuck yeah! If you need to find an insanely bloody game, look no further. Splatterhouse 2010 reboot is a pure bloodshed at its finest. This game is so bloody it makes MK9 look like a tea party. The game follows the same formula as the classic Splatterhouse games. Rick Taylor's dame Jennifer gets abducted by Dr. Henry West. Rick puts on an evil mask that gets power from blood and gives Rick some Mike Hagar muscles. And thus beginning the quest to save a damsel in distress and kill some corrupted along the way. And collecting pieces of the damsel's naughty pictures. The combat system in this game is very generic for the game of this decade, but it's fun to tear the corrupted apart when possible, thanks to Terror Mask's power. Despite the fact Terror Mask has a bloodthirst of 3 sweet tooths, he's very funny to listen through the game, especially when Jim Cummings voices him.
Who am I? Let's just say I'm God. You're God. At least the only God that's listening right now. What do I want? Same as any God. Little faith. For without faith, I am nothing. And without me, you're fucked.
Good god, it's like I'm listening at Negaduck for the entire game, but with swearing. And unlike the other Splatterhouse games, this game doesn't only take place in West Manor, but also in places like post-apocalyptic Big Apple and abandoned amusement park. Some sections in stages even are in 2D perspective with 8-bit music. And like many other gory games, the game's soundtrack mainly is hard rock compositions and few actual metal tracks. But unlike most Finnish people, I don't listen to metal music that much. If you're a fan of Namco, very bloody games or both, go try this game, even just for getting to play the original trilogy afterwards. Oh yeah, that's right, you get to play the original Splatterhouse trilogy in this game as a bonus content. One last thing before ending this segment. Jim Cummings for the win!
And it ends here.
I wasted so many years for not trying that much Capcom games, and ever since 2013, Capcom's being one of my favorite game developers out there. I got to play plenty of Capcom games during 2014, with many of them making to this list and to the honorable mentions. Starts the Capcom part of this countdown. Let's take a look at its most iconic series of all, Mega Man. Along with Mega Man 2, 3 and X3, I got my hands on a remarkable remake for PSP, Mega Man Powered Up. While not being anywhere near as good as Mega Man Maverick Hunter X is, Powered Up is still one of the best PSP games out there. Mega Man Powered Up is a remake of the first Mega Man game with 2 new Robot Masters and with chibi characters. Sure, chibi style might turn this game a bit kiddish, but it works so well in Mega Man and it makes the environment look like an old Japanese anime. Not only that, but now the classic Robot Masters have personalities in their character, like Iceman with his entertaining military-like split personality. Speaking of Robot Masters, this game even has an option to play as any Robot Master in the game when they're defeated by using only Mega Buster against them. This gives the player so many different ways to get through the stages and find hidden items.
One more thing!
To make this game even more awesome, it even has an actual level editor. Yes, you can do your own stages in this game. In conclusion, Mega Man Powered Up is one of the best remakes ever created, and it's a perfect Mega Man game for those who do Mega Buster only walkthroughs. So if you have PSP, get this game pronto! It's QG approved!
And it ends here.
Why I didn't try this game sooner? I mean seriously, Rayman Origins is a real epicness of a 2D platformer. Go friends! Sure, I admit the first Rayman is still the best game in the series, but Rayman Origins is the perfect kinda game for the series. It brings Rayman back to its 2D roots and adds some rather delightfully obscure art style on the table. Many things in this game bring some good memories from the first game. Both games have similar locations, at least in first two worlds, and both games have electro gauges to find and open. And like in Rayman 3, this game has pretty funky soundtrack to listen. And you can play this game on co-op. How cool is that? That makes this very difficult game a bit easier and so much fun. Speaking of difficulty, this has to be one of the hardest games I've ever played. Well, maybe Ghost and Goblin series is way harder, but this game is difficult even on today's standards. At some points of the game, you need to make a perfect timing to get through the stages. Those goddamn sprint challenges. Not to mention the game's boss monsters are actually pretty hard to defeat.
There is no monster more dangerous than a lack of compassion. My mistake.
Overall, Rayman Origins is a perfect 2D platformer for expert gamers to play. With its challenge, great visuals and soundtrack, Rayman Origins is one of the best 2D platformers ever. Until Rayman Legends came in.
And it ends here.
You guys are probably wondering what's my favorite comic book franchise of all time. Most people say either Batman, X-Men or Don Ross's Donald Duck comic, but me, I have to give the honor for Marvel's bestseller, Spiderman. And why not? The webhead's not amazing for nothing. He has crap ton of good movies, TV series and different incarnations in alternate realities. Which leads us to the number 11 game on this list, Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions. If you're a big fan of the wall crawler, this is a nerd heaven for ya. Why? I'll tell ya why. First let's talk about the plot of the game. A magical tablet breaks into pieces and they scatter across 4 dimensions, each having their own Spider-Man. So it's your job to play as Amazing, Noir, 2099 and Ultimate Spider-Man to gather the tablet fragments from the clutches of the bad guys. Speaking of villains, this game has an excellent selection of baddies to deal with, some having their debut in some specific reality. So let's take a look what we have here. We have Kraven, Ultimate Electro, Scorpion 2099, Noir Walter, Hobgoblin 2099, Ultimate Deadpool, freaking Deadpool! The level design is pretty much an eye candy in this game, each dimension having its own visual uniqueness. While 2099 and Ultimate universes look like any other normal visually great game, Amazing and Noir gets the credit for astonishing visuals. with amazing universe having cel-shaded graphics to make it look like a comic book and Noir having a dark environment to sneak in. I also should mention how much differently each Spidey play in this game. Amazing Spidey focuses more on climbing and web-slinging to get through the stages, Noir is mainly relying on stealth like Batman does in Arkham games. 2099 Spidey Miguel O'Hara uses his speed in combat, and Ultimate Spider-Man uses the raw power of the symbiotes. Lastly, the audio of this game. It's fucking outstanding in every way. The soundtrack is composed by Jim Dooley, a man who also composed the part of the soundtracks of the PS3's infamous games. And the voice cast is very loyal to the animated incarnations of Spider-Man. All of the game's Spideys are voiced by 4 voice actors who voiced the web-slinger before the game's release, and almost the entire voice cast is assembled from the voice actors who has worked before in the Spider-Man's TV shows, with Stan Lee himself as the narrator. Aside from few tedious warp glitches in the game, this game's pretty solid licensed game and one of the greatest ones I've ever played. Like I said, Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions is a must-have game for any Spider-Man fan. With its great gameplay, loyalty to its source material, graphics and soundtrack, this game earned its number 11 spot on my list.
Yeah, those guys were alright, but you have to admit,
With 4 different Spider-Men?
the one thing I know for sure,
Out of all of them,
I'm the best! And it ends here.
Wrong Australian. I can thank PSB123 for getting me into the Tasmanian Tiger series, and my brother's fiancé for finding the games for me. I got the first 2 games on my PS2, but because my old PS2 is a total piece of shit and I only got a chance to play too briefly the second game, I have to put the first game on this list, and it deserves the spot. This game and its sequels were easily overshadowed by these great new platforming franchises back in the day, so not many people know about the series. But back to the business. The Tasmanian Tiger is like many other 3D platformer games. You need to collect certain items to get to the new stages and so on. And before you mention it, no, Ty isn't any sort of Crash Bandicoot wannabe at all. Or wallaby, whatever. To make the usual attack patterns of common platformer characters different, Chrome Studios was smart enough to make Ty attack in very clever ways. By using his strong teeth and jaws like Tasmanian tigers do in real life. Or did. Or whatever. And the most noticeable attack in Ty's disposal. Different boomerangs. These boomerangs are some way or another different from each other. Some are in fire, some freeze the enemies and water, some explode and work only underwater. And Ty can even glide with these boomerangs. How often you see that? Seriously, Ty should have been in top 10 boomerang wielders made by the Green Scorpion. The game's story is about an evil cassowary named Boss Cass trying to conquer the world by getting rid of all mammals from the planet. He already managed to trap almost every Tasmanian tiger in dimension called Dreamtime with the use of 5 mystic talismans.
I told you, talismans are not important.
Of course talismans are important.
Talismans are not important.
Talismans are very important.
Not
Oh
important.
god,
Very
here we
important.
go
Not
again.
important.
Very
Anyways, before getting trapped in Dreamtime, one of the Tasmanian tigers threw his doomerang to fling the talismans across the Australian outbacks. 20 years later, Ty hears about these events from the elder of Bunyip tribe, Nandukili. So Ty sets out to find the talismans with the help of his friends like a cockatoo named Nigel Maury. The level design isn't really anything too spectacular, but they're really big and a single stage might take more than 30 minutes to find everything collectible from it. As for the bosses, they're pretty epic as well, but aside from the final boss, you can only face them once. One reason why this game isn't any higher. But despite this, the Tasmanian Tiger and its sequel are excellent games for platformer gamers. if only Europeans would have the third game released for PS2.
Oh, of course, well, that can certainly be arranged, yeah.
Right after I sprout feet feathers and turn into a flamingo!
And it ends here.
To be honest, I'm not a fan of Grand Theft Auto series. They're just the games that aren't for me. But what you get when you combine GTA sandbox gameplay with Alien B-movies and Invader Zim? I'll tell ya, Waffles Minion, eat your heart out, because at District 9 we get to destroy all humans. Holy fucking shit, this game is so awesome! Destroy All Humans is a game where title literally says everything. You play as wisecracking jackass alien named Cryptotila... Motherfucking Crypto. Playing as Crypto was one of the funniest gaming experiences I had during 2014 for being like playing as Roger from American Dad with death metal's voice. In this game you terrorize US and A with Crypto's weapons, psychokinesis, mind control and heavily armored UFO to destroy everything and gather human DNA. The game is simply about, well, destroying all humans and doing probes and other missions. Like in a common B-movie about aliens. Not to mention the game feels a bit like Invader Zim because your ally Pox has the exact same voice as Invader Zim has. Just like Carbuncle from Micromice from Mars and Wuya from Shaolin Showdown has the exact same voice despite being opposite gendered characters, but that's the story for another day. Like I need to explain anything else about this game, it's all about being motherfucking Crypto! He's so badass at Jackass who fries some monkey ass! If I find the second game, I hope it's even better than this one. Well, I guess it is. Well, that's the end of part 1. I hope you enjoyed and stay tuned for part 2, which includes the remaining 8 games of this list. Until next time!